I rented this game as a kid, and the only thing I remember about it is hating it. And I mean, I really hated it. And for the life of me, I can't remember why. So what a better way to remember than to review it.
Spyro's come a long way, from being owned by Insomniac Games to Universal Interactive Studios, which was bought out by Vivendi Games and then merged with Activision, who now owns the rights to Spyro. Crash Bandicoot also shares a similar colorful change of hands as well, and I'll go over that when I review the game. It's odd if you think about it. Naughty Dog made Crash and Insomniac made Spyro, two series that became mascots for the Sony PlayStation. Naughty Dog would then go on to make the Jak trilogy and a few spin-offs, while Insomniac would make the Ratchet & Clank series, both becoming mascots for the PlayStation 2. Then Sucker Punch came in with Sly Cooper. Then the three studios strayed away from the cartoony look and made Uncharted, Resistance, and Infamous. And all three studios have worked with each other as well, but only two, Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch, are owned by Sony Computer Entertainment of America, while Insomniac remains its own privately owned company.
It's kind of interesting if you think about it.
Spyro is Insomniac's second game after an FPS called Disruptor, and ironically, Disruptor was released in 1996, and 10 years later, Insomniac would release another FPS called Resistance. I know I'm off topic right now, but I find it interesting to mention. But Spyro is a kind of platform/adventure game where your goal is to run around the 5 worlds and their levels to free the other dragons from their crystal imprisonment. It's a simple goal, but it takes you on a pretty long journey. The story takes place in the land of dragons. The main villain, Nasty Nork, casts a spell on the dragons to imprison them in crystal for...
I don't know, because he's a dick.
I'll admit that I didn't read too much into the story only because it's on par with the children's pop-up book. I mean, it's pretty juvenile when you compare it to later Spyro games, but the series had to start somewhere, right? The only dragon that's not affected is Spyro because of his small stature. That kind of reminds me of the premise of Radical Rex, where the main character is unaffected by a magic spell for a somewhat silly reason. Spyro is too short, Radical Rex was asleep. That's pretty silly, but whatever, I'll run with it. Well, time to save the world.
Well, not the world per se, but the 5 dragon families.
The graphics are pretty good for the PlayStation. It's got a nice cartoony style, but I can't help but feel that the textures look rather flat. I suppose you can argue that it adds to the cartoon look. I can see that the graphics have textures, but they could still be a little bit more defined is all that I'm saying. Like compared to Crash Bandicoot, a game that came out 2 years prior and the textures were more defined. The music is good too. It matches the levels and the overall theme of the game. However, it just doesn't get me in the mood to play the game. It's more apt to put me to sleep as it's more soothing than something that would pump you up. Imagine playing Doom, but with that rocking soundtrack, it's something really soothing. It wouldn't put you in the mood to be a one-man demon slaughterhouse, would it? The answer is no.
The music is good, but I just can't get into it. I wish I could, but I can't. The music did start to pick up for me around the 4th level, but by that time I just thought it was too late.
And I didn't know this until I looked it up, but the guy who voices Spyro also voiced various characters in Nickelodeon cartoons, like Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life and Mr. Crocker from The Fairly OddParents. He was then succeeded by Tom Kenny, who was then succeeded by Jess Harnell, both of which voiced Nickelodeon characters. Only when Elijah Wood took over and succeeded by Josh Keaton did that end the chain of voice actors in Nickelodeon cartoons. I know that these little side road topics mean nothing about the game, but the history of Spyro is pretty cool when you look at all the things that happen behind the scenes. But anyway, to save the dragons, you're given a good control layout. X jumps and pressing it again will allow you to glide. Square allows you to run and headbutt enemies. Triangle will allow you to look around and drop you in midair if you're gliding. Circle will allow you to breathe fire. L1 and R1 will make Spyro roll, but it's a short and useless distance.
I don't get that. Why would you give us a short roll distance? It's not going to save us from anything, like an explosion.
Anyway, L2 and R2 rotate the camera. Really slowly. However, and I wish I looked this up earlier because now I feel like an idiot, clicking the analog stick will set the camera back to its default position behind Spyro. The select button brings up your progress so you can see how many dragons need to be freed, gems that need collecting, and eggs that need recovering. But those are the controls. But then there's how Spyro controls, and this is really the only thing that I don't feel is right, to say the least. Spyro controls like a bus. If you turn while moving, he makes a really wide turn, but in odd contrast, he responds to the slightest wiggle, so it's easy to fall off a ledge. When controlling Spyro, I feel like I'm playing Desert Bus.
Bonus points if you know what that game is without looking it up.
Each world that you enter is a hub world with doors for every level. The hub worlds are pretty much a level all by themselves too, with enemies that you can kill for gems which you need if you want to 100% the game. Yeah, as useless as the gems seem to be, they do serve a purpose, and I'll explain that later. To enter a level, all you have to do is pass through a door, and you'll enter a very unique loading screen where it shows Spyro gliding to his destination. That's pretty innovative for the time, and it doesn't take long to load the level either. Well, it shouldn't take long to load because the levels are pretty short.
Spyro was made 8 years before Sonic 2006 and was made on what would be considered ancient technology in 2006. And they did loading screens a lot better than Sonic Team did in 2006. Now that has to be embarrassing.
The main objective is to explore the levels, find and release the dragons who will sometimes give you tips or tell you to collect the gems or the stolen eggs. While the levels are designed for exploration, they're pretty linear feeling and the levels just loop around. For the most part, the exit is a stone throws away from the entrance, which makes the stages feel short. But the levels are pretty imaginative for each world, fitting the overall general theme with the dragon family you're saving. Also, all the bosses except for the last one are completely optional. You don't need to fight them, and depending on your progress, you can skip entire worlds because to travel from world to world, all you need is to have a certain number of dragons rescued, collected enough gems, or recovered enough dragon eggs.
If you want to get to the bonus level and see the alternate ending, you have to collect everything. Now that may not sound so bad, but when you break it down, well...
So that's 80 dragons, which isn't bad, 12 eggs, and that's 12 of those little blue-robed bastards that you have to chase, and 12,000 gems to collect, which means you'll be spending hours upon hours of searching. At that point, it becomes more of a chore than an actual game. And aside from how Spyro handles, I remember why I hated this game as a kid. When you glide from place to place, there's times where if you time your glide wrong, you'll just hit the edge, bounce up, back, and sometimes to your death. Water is also a death sentence, causing either damage or instant death. I can understand that Spyro can't swim, but standing ankle deep in water causes damage? Come on. Sonic can stand ankle deep in water and he's fine.
I can understand if it was acid or lava or even molten metal and you stuck your foot in it and you got hurt, but it's water. Isn't that a little silly?
And one final thing, and this is just a nitpick. I would have liked to have seen more voice acting and to see the story fleshed out more. Yeah, when you free a dragon they tell you something, but it's something that you already know. But when I'm playing this game now, and even remembering the silly reason for why I hated it back then, I still don't understand why I hated it. I suppose that I just didn't have the patience for it back then. I honestly don't know what my 13-year-old self was thinking back then. However, Spyro does start to overstay its welcome about halfway through the game. I can tell you now though, I would like to check out the other Spyro games and now I want to get into Skylanders, just because I played this game and enjoyed it for the most part. But my wallet actually thanks me, as the fact that I have to spend 10 for one, 15 for a giant, or 25 for a pack for the figures is what's stopping me from getting the money sink known as Skylanders.
So what am I going to give Spyro the Dragon? Well, I can say when I was 13 I misjudged this game. It's good, it has to be, right? After all, the series has come this far and it's outlasted Crash Bandicoot.